All right, listeners, buckle up. It's Halloween, the sugar rush is hitting, and Apple decided to drop their Q4 earnings report, like a rogue pumpkin spice latte on our freshly pressed spreadsheets. Talk Tickers is here to dissect this beast and see if it's a trick or a treat for your portfolio.
We're diving deep into two juicy sources. The earnings call transcript straight from Tim Cook's perfectly modulated vocal cords, and a spicy pre-earnings analyst preview. We're talking cutting through the corporate lingo and getting to what actually moves the needle.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the top-line numbers, Apple beat Wall Street's expectations for revenue and earnings per share. But like a fun-sized candy bar, there might be a hidden trick in the treat bag.
Right. A 6% year-over-year revenue increase, hitting a September quarter record of $94.9 billion. Sounds fantastic. And it is, except net income actually took a dip, thanks to a fat one-time tax charge stemming from that European ruling. Remember that whole saga?
Yes. The joys of international tax law, always a thrilling subplot. But the analysts actually predicted this pretty accurately, which either means they're getting better at reading between the lines of Apple's press releases, or Apple's just getting a bit more predictable, which, honestly, for a company of their size, wouldn't be a shock.
Right, like how many rabbits can they pull out of their hat? But let's get to the main attraction here, the iPhone. The product that built an empire, the object of envy and desire. Did the iPhone 16 live up to the hype?
Well, iPhone revenue grew 6%, hitting $46.2 billion, another September quarter record. Tim Cook himself claimed iPhone 15 sales were stronger than the iPhone 14 during the same post-launch period. And get this, iPhone 16 sales even topped the iPhone 15. Sounds like a home run, right?
Hold your applause, because remember those pre-earnings reports we were looking at? They were pointing to potentially slower iPhone 16 sales, whispering about a lack of buzz around the new AI features.
No.
And then there's the Indonesia situation.
Yes. Indonesia decided to throw a wrench in Apple's gears by banning iPhone 16 sales. Talk about a plot twist. What's the deal there?
Basically, they're flexing their muscles, trying to pressure Apple into investing more in their country. It's a power play, no doubt. And on top of that, we've got those pesky rumors about Apple slashing iPhone 16 production by 10 million units. That's a lot of iPhones gathering dust.
Yeah, not exactly the image of a company swimming in confidence. So we've got conflicting signals here. Tim Cook says demand is through the roof, but then you've got these other factors pointing towards potential weakness. What's the verdict?
It's too early to tell, for sure. We need to see how the next quarter plays out.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right? This is where it gets really interesting for you, dear listener. Because this uncertainty, this potential for a slowdown, is precisely what creates opportunity for the savvy investor.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. But before we start drawing up any trading strategies, let's not forget about the elephant in the room. China. Apple's had a bit of a rough patch there recently.
Yep. Declining revenue in China over the past 3 quarters. However, some analysts are predicting a rebound this quarter. It all hinges on whether Chinese consumers are ready to embrace the iPhone 16 with its AI bells and whistles, or if they're holding out for something even shinier and newer.
So the iPhone story is a bit of a nail-biter this time around. Is it a blockbuster hit, or are we looking at a box office flop? We'll have to wait and see.
But while the fate of the iPhone hangs in the balance, there's another part of Apple's business that's been quietly crushing it, their services segment. This is the real moneymaker, the engine that keeps the Apple machine humming.
All right, let's talk services. They hit a new all-time record for services revenue at $25 billion, a cool 12% year-over-year increase. This isn't just some small side hustle anymore. It's becoming a significant chunk of their revenue.
And get this, paid subscriptions across Apple services have more than doubled in the past 4 years, exceeding a mind-blowing 1 billion. They're building an empire of subscriptions, a vast digital kingdom where everyone's paying their monthly dues to King Apple.
Talk about a loyal following. And it looks like the analysts were right on the money with their predictions of double-digit growth in this segment. This part of their business is becoming a reliable cash cow for Apple. But what does this mean for you, dear listener?
It means that Apple is no longer just a hardware company. They're building an ecosystem, a sticky web of services that keeps people locked in. This is crucial for their future, especially if iPhone sales start to waver.
And let's not forget about Apple Card. It might seem like a small piece of the puzzle, but it's a sign of how Apple is expanding into new areas.
Absolutely. J.D. Power has ranked Apple Card #1 in customer satisfaction among co-branded credit cards. For 4 years in a row, they're taking their design expertise, their brand power, and applying it to new industries. It's a smart move.
Okay, so services are booming. The iPhone is a bit of a question mark.
Yeah.
But there's another big piece of this puzzle we need to address. Apple Intelligence. Is this the game changer Apple is hoping for? Or just another flashy marketing gimmick?
Well, the jury's still out on whether Apple Intelligence is the revolutionary force they're making it out to be. But Tim Cook was pretty eager to point out that early adoption of iOS 18.1, which includes Apple Intelligence, is twice as fast as iOS 17.1 was last year. People are clearly intrigued.
Yeah, twice as fast sounds impressive. But let's not forget, new iOS versions always have a honeymoon period. People are excited to download, play around with the new features,
Yeah.
and then, well, sometimes the shine wears off.
Yeah.
So how do we separate the hype from the reality here?
That's the challenge, isn't it? We need to look beyond the initial buzz and see how Apple Intelligence actually integrates into people's lives. Does it genuinely make their iPhones more useful, more intuitive, more indispensable? Or is it just a collection of cool tricks that people will get bored with after a few weeks?
Right, because remember, Apple's betting big on Apple Intelligence driving the next upgrade cycle. They need people to be so blown away by these AI features that they ditch their perfectly good iPhone 15s and scramble to get the latest and greatest.
Exactly. And there's another wrinkle here. Apple's rolling out Apple Intelligence in stages. New features, language support, it's all coming in drips and drabs. This makes it harder to gauge the true impact, especially in the short term.
Okay, so picture this. You're in Europe, you've been hearing all this buzz about Apple Intelligence, you're ready to jump on the bandwagon, but guess what? Some of the key features aren't available in your language yet. Frustrating, right? And that kind of staggered rollout could impact demand in different regions, making the whole picture even murkier.
You're getting it. It's a complex rollout, and it's going to take time to see the full effect. But there's another angle to consider here, one that's particularly exciting for you if you're interested in the long-term potential of Apple Intelligence. They've released APIs for developers to integrate Apple Intelligence into their apps.
Okay, hold on. You're going to have to break that down for me.
Yeah.
APIs, developers, what does it all mean?
Think of it as Apple opening the doors for other companies to build upon their AI technology. Imagine a wave of new apps powered by Apple Intelligence that can do things we haven't even thought of yet. This could be a game changer, not just for Apple, but for the entire app ecosystem.
So Apple Intelligence could be the spark that ignites a whole new generation of AI-powered apps. That's a pretty enticing prospect.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with our AI fantasies, there's a rather large looming legal issue we need to address.
Ah, yes, the Department of Justice lawsuit against Google. This one could have a major impact on Apple's bottom line, even if they're not directly involved in the case.
Remind us how this whole Google thing ties into Apple's financial well-being.
Well, Google pays Apple a hefty sum, billions of dollars annually, to be the default search engine on their devices. It's a sweet deal for both parties. But if the DOJ wins their case and Google is forced to change their practices, Apple could lose a big chunk of that revenue.
Ouch. That's gotta hurt. So Apple is walking a tightrope here. They're betting big on Apple Intelligence to drive future growth, but this legal battle with Google could throw a serious wrench in their plans.
Exactly. It's a high-stakes game, and the outcome is far from certain. This is where you as an investor need to be paying close attention. How does Apple plan to mitigate this risk? Are they exploring alternative revenue streams? Do they have a plan B if the Google deal goes sour?
All right, so we've got the iPhone, which is a bit of a wild card right now. We've got services, which are a powerhouse, but could be impacted by this Google lawsuit. And we've got Apple Intelligence, which has tons of potential, but is still shrouded in uncertainty. Where did that leave us?
Let's shift gears and talk investor takeaways. Remember, this is not financial advice, but we like to look at the big picture. Overall, Apple's in a fascinating position. iPhone sales are a question mark, services are a rock, and AI is the wild card. But here's something to consider. Apple is expected to continue its aggressive share buyback program.
Ugh, the share buyback. A classic maneuver to appease shareholders, boost the stock price, and signal confidence even when things might be a bit shaky. How much are we talking here?
Estimates are around $25 billion this quarter alone. Now, whether that's a sustainable long-term strategy is debatable, but in the short term, it could provide some support for the stock, even if earnings disappoint.
Okay, so even if the iPhone sales are a bit soft or the Google situation takes a turn for the worse, Apple could still prop up their stock price with these buybacks. It's like a financial safety net, right?
Exactly. But the big question remains, is Apple becoming more like a traditional software company, or are they forging a new path? That's something we'll be watching closely in the coming months and years.
Yeah, because they're trying to have it both ways. They want to be the kings of hardware, A&D, the masters of software.
Yeah.
Can they pull it off?
It's an ambitious goal, no doubt. But let's not forget, Apple's pulled off some pretty impressive feats in the past. They've disrupted industries, redefined product categories, and amassed a loyal following that would make a cult leader jealous. So I wouldn't count them out just yet.
Okay, so Apple's facing some challenges, no doubt. But they've also got a lot going for them. Strong services growth, a potential game changer in Apple Intelligence, and a whole lot of cash to play with. What do you think, listeners? Are you bullish or bearish on Apple?
Now let's have some fun and throw out an outrageous yet plausible trade idea. Given Apple's massive cash reserves and the potential threat of the DOJ lawsuit disrupting their revenue stream,
Right.
what if, hear me out, Apple made a bold move to acquire Spotify?
Whoa, hold on. Apple buying Spotify. Now, that's a spicy take, but I got to admit, it's not entirely outlandish.
Think about it. It would bolster their services offerings, give them control of a major player in the music streaming market, and potentially offset any losses from the Google deal. It's a win-win-win.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm buying what you're selling, but I have to admit, it's a pretty audacious idea.
Yeah.
Just imagine the antitrust lawyers salivating over that deal.
Of course, this is purely speculative and for entertainment purposes only. We are not financial advisors. Don't go betting the farm on this one.
Disclaimer delivered. But hey, it's fun to speculate, right? Apple acquiring Spotify? Who knows? Maybe it's not as crazy as it sounds.
This earnings report is just a snapshot in time. The real story is how Apple will navigate the evolving tech landscape. How will they balance their hardware and software ambitions?
And how will they continue to deliver value to shareholders in a world that's increasingly obsessed with AI subscriptions and that sweet, sweet dopamine rush of a new iPhone notification?
We're eager to hear what you think. What are your takeaways from this deep dive into Apple's earnings? Share your thoughts and hot takes with Talk Tickers on social media.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more sharp-witted financial analysis, market insights, and of course, our signature blend of sardonic banter and dry humor. All right, listeners, so we've dug through the numbers, unearthed some hidden gems, and stirred up some spicy speculation. But what does this all mean for Apple's future? Is this tech titan still on top of its game, or are those cracks in the iPhone armor starting to show?
Well, let's be honest. Apple's playbook isn't exactly a secret. Double down on services, push further into AI, and maintain that iron grip on the premium hardware market. It's a strategy that's worked wonders for them so far. But can they keep it up in a world that's moving at warp speed?
Right, because the competition's not sitting still. Google's got their AI game going strong. Samsung's always nipping at their heels in the hardware department. And let's not forget the army of ambitious Chinese companies gunning for global domination.
It's a crowded playing field, no doubt. But Apple's got a few secret weapons up their sleeve. Brand loyalty that borders on fanaticism, an ecosystem that's stickier than a caramel apple on a hot summer day, and enough cash reserves to make Scrooge McDuck jealous.
So let's break down their strategy piece by piece. Services the golden goose of recurring revenue. Seems to be laying more and more gold eggs every quarter. People are happily shelling out for their monthly subscriptions to Apple Music, Apple TV, plus iCloud, and the whole shebang. But is this growth sustainable?
Here's why this matters to you. Apple's figured out how to create services that are so tightly integrated with their hardware that it becomes nearly impossible to imagine using one without the other. You buy an iPhone, you're practically guaranteed to become a subscriber to at least one, if not several of their services. It's brilliant, really.
It's like a beautiful, well-oiled money-making machine. But then you've got AI, the buzzword that's on everyone's lips these days. Apple's been relatively quiet compared to the likes of Google, but they're starting to make some moves with Apple Intelligence.
Right. And their strategy seems to be a slow and steady one. They're not rushing to be the first out the gate with every flashy AI feature. Instead, they're focusing on integrating AI seamlessly into their existing products, making them more personalized and intuitive.
It's a classic Apple move, right? They
Oh.
take their time, perfect the technology, and then unleash it upon the world with a flourish. But the big question is, will it be enough?
Well, that's what we're all waiting to see. But think about this. Apple Intelligence has the potential to transform not just their devices, but the entire app ecosystem. They've given developers the tools to integrate this AI into their apps, which could lead to a wave of innovation we haven't even imagined yet.
So Apple Intelligence could be the catalyst for a whole new era of AI-powered apps. Apps that can anticipate your needs, personalize your experiences, and maybe even do your taxes for you.
Hey, a listener can dream, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about the hardware. The iPhones, the Macs, the Apple Watches. These are still the iconic products that define Apple. But they're facing increasing pressure from competitors, offering similar features at lower prices. Can Apple maintain their premium pricing power in the face of this onslaught?
That's a key question for any investor. Can Apple convince consumers that their products are still worth the premium price tag? Or will they be forced to lower prices and compete on a more level playing field?
So what's the verdict? Is Apple still the unstoppable tech juggernaut, or are they heading for a fall from grace?
Here's the bottom line. Apple is facing some real challenges, but they've also got a lot going for them. Strong services growth, the potential of Apple Intelligence, and a brand that's still one of the most valuable in the world.
It's like they're standing at a crossroads. One path leads to continued dominance, the other to a slow decline. Which path they choose will depend on their ability to innovate, adapt, and stay ahead of the curve.
And for those of you playing the stock market, remember Apple is a long-term investment. Don't panic over short-term fluctuations. Focus on the fundamentals, do your research, and remember,
This is not financial advice. We're just two finance nerds with microphones and opinions. But hey, it's been a wild ride dissecting Apple's earnings, hasn't it?
it has. From record-breaking revenue to the looming threat of the DOJ lawsuit, there's never a dull moment in the world of Apple.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Apple's latest earnings report. We hope we've given you some insights, some laughs, and maybe even some food for thought.
And remember, if you want more sharp-witted financial analysis, market insights, and our signature blend of sardonic humor, be sure to subscribe to Talk Tickers.
Until next time, stay informed, stay skeptical, and keep those portfolios diversified.